Tell him, McCluskey. Tell him what time it is.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
All you people are so scared of me.
Come quietly or there will be trouble.
Man, that's just me.
I'm Batman.
This is Sparta!
There is a tiger in the bathroom!
I'm an excellent driver.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
You only have 3 rules. First, do your part. Second, never harm another glader. Most importantly, never go beyond those walls.
Hello and welcome to this week's Monday Movie Show. Yes, we are live. Yes, we are slightly late. That's down to Andy's internet.
Technical problems, basically. Again, let's say an application just decided to completely bug out on me. Literally seconds before I was going to go and start getting us ready to go, and
it's the joy of the internet browser, Firefox in general. With Andy, with me, I'm glad that you didn't go live because I was having problems with Google Chrome and my computer running quite slow as well until it decided to go, yep, I'm going to work now. So it was panic all around, but we've eventually decided to go live. Even though it is just turned 9 o'clock, and I do put up now, we're live between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. So technically we're not late. It's just to cover ourselves, which is probably the best way to do it. Slight strange twist around this week, because normally Andy will be hosting the show for the next few weeks. But this week, there's a reason why I'm hosting the cinema section. It's down to the fact that Andy's got 3 cinema releases to review, and I've only got the 1. So these movies we're looking at in the cinema section.
Yep, we are looking at the sequel, the continuation of the Maze Runner story with the Scorch Trials. We have M. Night Shyamalan back to the big screen doing what he does best, supposedly. Guess we'll find out in The Visit. We have Tom Hardy playing the Krays in Legend, and we have a Woody Allen film to round out the cinema releases, which managed to squeeze in with Joaquin Phoenix being The Irrational Man.
And on DVD and Blu-ray, we're looking at only 4 films, even though on the site it says 5. It's just I couldn't have enough time to watch the 5th film. So the 4 films we're looking at are these.
Yeah, it's not as if we haven't got a lot to do in that half of the show, because there is a very big film coming out DVD and Blu-ray today. That is the Avengers Age of Ultron. And going up against that you have surprisingly sort of a fairly big film, but trying to go against them in drama in The Age of Adeline, and then the other couple of films rounding out the show, which I don't have that much hope for them really, given the company they're in. Citizen 4 and The Canal.
Yeah, and on top of that we have our TV movie of the week. This week I'm not cheating, I only actually have 1 film, but for me it is the best film by far this week. The DVD Blu-ray top 10, the UK box office top 10. Let's kick things off as we normally do with some movie news though.
Yep, the movie news I've got here, first of all, I've got a couple of comic book related ones, as we tend to have nowadays, just about almost every week.
We've taken over following The Nerd, haven't we?
We have.
Because they're no longer on the air, so we're just taking their comic book stuff.
Yeah. First is a piece of news that's just been sort of rumoured. It's been rumoured for ages, but finally been confirmed today, according to website The Wrap, who has said that in official interviews with Rachel McAdams, she has confirmed that, as per the speculation for the last couple of months, that she has been cast in Marvel's Doctor Strange. There's no idea yet as to what role she's going to be playing, but she's expected to play the female lead potential love interest for the character of Doctor Strange, who'll be played by Benedict Cumberbatch. She'll join Tilda Swinton and Chiwetel Ejiofor in the cast, and it's going to be directed by Sinister and Deliver Us from Evil director Scott Derrickson for a November 4th, 2016 release.
Doctor Strange, for me, still is the one I'm looking forward to. Because it is the one out of the... Even though this next wave of Marvel films are sort of like the outcast characters, but it's the one that I'm more intrigued by because it is directed by a horror director in Scott Derrickson. It's just the cast that they've got together. It's people you would never expect to be in a superhero movie, which makes me even more intrigued.
The only thing that I'm wondering is, I'm thinking, if they wanted to go for someone who's really going to get that creepiness feel to it, why not get someone like Guillermo del Toro? Because he would definitely put out the creepy feels in it.
He would, but I adore Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro is my favourite director. The problem with Guillermo del Toro is he's constantly announcing projects. He's only just not long announced another project that he's involved with. He's got Pacific Rim 2, even though that's now been slightly delayed. Crimson Peak, which is out next month as well.
Which I've seen the trailer for in the cinema, and it's quite freaky.
Yeah, he's also wanting to try and get his H.P. Lovecraft film off the ground in the Mountains of Madness. That's on and off again. That's constantly going on and off again. He's still involved with the TV series The Strain. And so there is a lot of stuff that Guillermo del Toro is doing. And I think Hellboy was his superhero. And I think that's good enough for del Toro. I just don't think that del Toro suits Marvel or DC or that kind of area. I think del Toro should stick to what he does best. Yes, like you said, he would add inventiveness and he would add creepiness, but I think they've gone with probably one of the best directors to do that in Scott Derrickson, because he has shown with Sinister is very creepy, and there is times with Delivers from Evil where he manages to get the darkness really well done in the film, and so I think they've gone with the right choice with him.
Okay, other comic book related movie news, as I said, going into DC territory now. We've got from website heroichollywood.com, who have sort of spread out this rumour that they have had a source confirm to them that Warner Brothers are looking at potential casting for the Wonder Woman movie. Now, Wonder Woman has already been cast. It's going to be Gal Gadot. I can't pronounce the name properly. I'm terrible with it.
Gadot, whichever you want.
But the issue of what they're casting now, they're looking to cast other roles in the film, obviously, and the ones that it seems to be have been, apparently, according to a source said, have been their top wanted actors for particular roles. They're going to have the characters of Ares, God of War, and the character of Circe, the Sorceress. And the actors that they want for these roles in particular are supposedly Sean Bean and Eva Green.
I love Eva Green. I know somebody who's an even bigger Eva Green fan than I am. Lauren, who does the horror show with me from Page 2 Screen, she is obsessed with Eva Green, and so she will definitely go and see her in that, in anything that she's in.
It's early days yet, and as you say, it's just rumours, so there's nothing been confirmed, there's nothing been even announced or anything yet. But because of the fact that the movie is still not got a release date yet for a couple of years off, it's June 23rd, 2017, so we're literally 2 months off of 2 years from that.
Yeah, it's more superhero stuff. We need to get away from. It's a good job that all the news stories that I've got after your final piece of news is non-superhero related.
Well, my final piece of news isn't superhero related, but I can tie in superhero relation to it because it's around the UFC fighter turned actress Ronda Rousey, last seen in the Fast and Furious 7, who's also been apparently sort of attempting to bid for the role of Marvel's Captain Marvel. But this isn't anything to do with that. This is to do with a remake of a movie.
Yay.
It is a remake of a Patrick Swayze movie from 1989. It's not Point Break, because we already know about that. That's already happening. That's actually coming out very shortly because the trailer is being shown in cinemas now.
And it looks pants.
It's a remake of Roadhouse.
Yeah.
It's going to be happening. I mean, we're going to get this. We're probably going to get announcements like this every week, every couple of weeks, of remakes of movies, because Hollywood's well has run dry of original titles. And the thing is, I mean, it's leave the Swayze alone. Just leave the Swayze alone. I'm Point Break's one of my favourite films. I'm absolutely not looking forward to the new one at all, aside from the fact of that there's one aspect of it which I like. They updated it to have the whole thing of eco-terrorism about it. Other than that, I saw the trailer and I literally went and sat there and I went, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, you know how I feel when it comes to remakes. I'm probably one of the worst people to actually come to about remakes and reboots and all that stuff, because it's just down to Hollywood having no clue what they're doing. Originality is now probably about 5% of the films that we see. Maybe it's 10% maximum of the films we see on the big screen now. Most of them are either remakes, reboots, reimaginings, or sequels.
I mean, just thinking about it, that's 3 films then of Patrick Swayze's that are getting the remake treatment, or have had. I mean, Red Dawn was already done. We've now got Point Break coming out soon, and then this.
And next will probably be Dirty Dancing.
I was just thinking that. Oh God, no!
They made a sequel to it, Havana Nights, which was
They made a TV
awful.
series to it as well.
Yeah, the sequel was even worse. Havana Nights is really bad. It's the Grease 2 of movies. And we know how bad Grease 2 is. That's atrocious, that movie.
But the thing that's really bad is that Grease 2 actually has a cult following.
You know, most films have a cult following, so yeah.
Big cult following, though.
Yeah, big cult following. Sorry, on to my news then. Well, this series, first piece of news that I've got, has got a bit of a cult following as well, but Francis Ford Coppola has announced that Jeepers Creepers 3 is officially happening and that he will produce it. Original director Victor Silva will return to direct. Shooting begins next year.
I gotta admit, I enjoyed both the Jeepers Creepers films. Second one wasn't that good, but it did try and change things up a little bit. And I liked that it wasn't just another the same thing again, but it did kind of drop the ball a bit. And I didn't mind it, but I wouldn't be against the third one if they do it well, pull it off well, and they keep to the original idea, because supposedly they were going to try and make a whole load of Jeepers Creepers films, and the rule they had is that they were going to make each one for a limited budget of only around about $10 million each. I hope they're going to stick to that, because it's what makes it interesting to see what they come up with for a limited budget, and also it means that if it's not a massive success, it doesn't have to make an absolute bomb at the box office to break even or make money.
You know what they need to do then?
What?
Speak to Jason Blum. He's a genius. For example, I'll get on to reviewing The Visit in this week's show. And The Visit opened in the US. Its budget is less than $5 million. It opened to $28 million in the US in its opening weekend. Get Jason Blum to do it, to produce the film, to get Blumhouse Productions. He's on board with The Green Inferno. It's got a 25th of September release date in the US. Don't know when it's getting released over here. But if you want to make a movie on a budget, Jason Blum is your man to do it. So I'm agreeing with you. I like the Jeepers Creepers movies. Yeah, the second one is not as good as the first one, but it's got some interesting ideas in it.
The first one has that great thing it has two things in it particular that were really, really impressive to me. The sound effect mix of the film is a great sound mix, and that sound of that horn of the truck at the beginning of it is just one of those sounds that's really, really it terrifies you into submission. And then the other scene that really it's actually really freaked me out is the fact of the scene where they fall into the church down the drain.
Yeah.
And it's so dark and it's so freaky, and it's a thing of that it's edited in a way that it's very long shots to build tension, and boy does it build tension. Last half of the film nowhere near as successful as the first half, but overall an enjoyable, good film.
The wall of bodies, and that's really disturbing. That's
really
very well created scene now, but I agree with you on the truck. The last time I watched a film where it sort of like made me on edge by a truck noise was Jewel and The Hitcher.
Yeah.
So both of those, the truck noises in that, not the remake of The Hitcher.
Yeah, I was thinking that's another one.
No, not the Sean Bean one. A King Kong vs. Godzilla movie could be happening after the King Kong origin story Skull Island moving from Universal to Warner Brothers.
Why?
It's down to Legendary Pictures. Legendary Pictures owns the rights to the King Kong story, and what they wanted to do is, because Warner Brothers owns the rights to the Godzilla franchise, they wanted to move it in tour so they were able to actually create a King Kong versus Godzilla movie, because Universal were just distributing the film. They had no say in the movie at all. It's all under Legendary Pictures. So it was up to Legendary Pictures they've decided to go to Warner Brothers here. Will you distribute it? If that's the case, why don't we make a Godzilla versus King Kong movie?
They're trying to do the whole thing of Avengers and then what's been done with the horror films at Universal and stuff. So everything's now becoming shared universes after Marvel did it and showed that it can be done and be profitable, basically.
Yeah, we'll throw Godzuki in next.
I have no idea. That's one reference too far for me.
Yeah, Godzuki's Godzilla's son. So yeah, if Bouncy is actually listening, he will actually know who Godzuki is. But he was part of the animated kids TV series, and he's really annoying. Just think of Barney the dinosaur, slightly bigger.
Oh God, let's not, please. Let's just move on.
Exactly. Two small pieces of news is the running time for the next James Bond film has been revealed. Spectre will clock in at 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Ooh, that's actually longer than the Avengers films.
Yeah, so it is the longest Bond film, so your bottoms will be numb by the end of it.
Okay.
And Minions has become the second highest grossing animated film of all time, behind Frozen and ahead of Toy Story 3. The film has now taken $1.08 billion to the worldwide box office, thanks to it opening it's just opened in China, taking somewhere in the region of around about $25 million in its opening weekend over there.
And it's still got to get released on DVD and Blu-ray, which will be fairly shortly, I think.
November 2nd, I think it is.
Yeah,
very early November, so...
Which is going to give its numbers another boost as well, so...
Yep, we will be hearing and seeing more of the bottom peoples.
Could it be overtaking Frozen in that case?
No, that'll not happen. That Frozen is just way too far ahead. I think it's at some like 1.6 billion, so that's just way too out there for Minions to do that. But nobody expected Minions to do this well.
No.
Better than the Despicable Me series, so
I still haven't seen it as well.
Well, it's there for DVD and Blu-ray, which you'll be doing anywhere when it's released. The UK box office top 10, and so at number 10 is Hitman Agent 47.
Yeah, it's really... Well, it's not a Hitman. It's taken the character and just completely doing away with anything to do with what the game does, and just doing a dumb action film with it. And it's actually... It's not... I don't think it's better than the first one. I don't think it's worse than the first one. I think it's on par because of the fact that the first one wasn't brilliant either.
I think the first one is slightly better just because I think Timothy Olyphant is a better Agent 47 than Rupert Friend. It was like I said when we reviewed the film, the annoying thing for me was seeing Hitman with hair. Even if it is just a little bit of hair, Hitman does not have hair at all. And his mannerisms, I think Timothy Olyphant got that better than what Rupert Friend did. Rupert Friend just looked like a mannequin. It just didn't work for me at all. At number 9 is The Man from U.N.C.L.E.,
which I've enjoyed it. Let's put it this way: I did have issues with it, but I didn't have massive issues when I saw it, and the issues have kind of dwindled a little bit since upon seeing it. And I want to see it again. I'm not going to see it again because I'm not going to have a chance because it's not doing massively well at the cinema. It's done okay for itself. But I don't think we're going to get a series out of this, which is what they were planning to do. But it's an okay, enjoyable watch. It doesn't put everything together until it gets towards the end.
I haven't seen it yet. And it's probably like with you with Minions, I'll probably have to just wait for it to come out on Blu-ray and DVD for me to see it. At number 8 is the new entry for American Ultra,
which has a great premise. All the elements are there. Everything's right there, except for the mix of the humour doesn't quite work. Doesn't get pulled off. It doesn't really know how to actually set up and pull off jokes with a great punchline. Has a couple of sort of decently set up action sequences which just go nowhere, and it just fizzles out as it comes to the end of its 90-minute running time, which is a shame because it should be a great up there spoof action comedy movie, and it's not. It's a mess.
To be honest, it doesn't even fizzle out when it gets to the 90-minute runtime. It majorly fizzles out halfway through the film because it just loses the plot. It's the director. His previous film was Project X, and that movie was just an 88-minute music video. He's worse than Harmony Korine when it comes to structure. Harmony Korine is a director who just hasn't a clue how to piece together his movies, even though Spring Breakers, I think, is his best film.
Actually, can you imagine Harmony Korine directing American Ultra? It would have been an impressively absolute messed up, but like you were on some kind of a drug or something for the whole film, and it probably would have been good.
It wouldn't have been, actually, because Harmony Korine, I think he's just on a constant acid trip. And so that, even though that might have worked for American Ultra and the kind of mindset that American Ultra is in, it's just wrong to give it to a director whose previous work before Project X was adverts and music videos. And that's exactly what his films feel like. No matter what actors you get, And in this film here, he's got some really good actors in it. And the script is not bad from Max Landis, who did Chronicle. It's a quite decent script. It's just the director mangled it badly. And number 7's a new entry for The Transporter Refueled,
which is completely unnecessary. It doesn't do anything new for the series. It actually takes away from the series because Jason Statham is not there, and Ed, I can't remember his name is, whoever his name is that's in the role now, is not Jason Statham. He's not of the same level, he's not the same caliber, and it's honestly come to this point now of that we're just getting these trashy European written by Luc Besson movies and produced by Luc Besson movies that are literally just, I mean, I don't expect it's probably lost money. I expect it's probably made money because it's been a small trashy film, but that's not what we want. We want to actually see, you know, some decent titles, some decent stuff coming together, and you know, it's really just, we deserve better and there should be better.
You know, what I'm finding interesting about this week's box office top 10 is that the bottom half of the chart is where all the horrible films lie, and the top end of the chart is where all the good films lie. So there's a number 6 rounding out rounding out the chart, rounding out the horrible films. At number 6 is Pixels.
Yeah, not Adam Sandler's worst, surprisingly, even though I still haven't seen The Cobbler. Apparently that's a lot worse. But the thing is, it's a film which is 20 years too late, 20 years too out of date in its humour, and characters you don't care about, terrible writing, and the effects are really good in it. But it's like a slight step up for Adam Sandler, but it's a way big drop down for Chris Columbus, who should do better.
Yeah, and so starting off in the good end of the chart at number 5 is Me, Earl and the Dying Girl,
which I really, really loved. It was my favourite film of last week. It is a great adaptation of a novel, which I've never read the novel, no idea, but I just know it's a great adaptation of a novel because it's a great film. Brilliant acting, brilliant performances from the young cast, brilliantly written and structured, as we said about structure in films already, and it's got great little bits of humour, and it's a really emotional attachment film in which you will get emotionally attached. You will come out of it going, you know, I felt my heartstrings pulled at that one.
And number 4 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Not the best of the series, but very, very competent and worthy, and a good addition to the series. And I'm glad to see that we're going to get another one, because if they can continue to put them out like this, I will be happy going to see them. Taken £20 million at the UK box office alone, and it's deserved it. It's a film that hasn't just been at the top and made money from kids. It's got an audience of all ages, I think, going to it, and it's appealing to them all because it's a general action film, which it does what it says on the tin.
And number 3 is this week's highest new entry, No Escape,
which I really liked. I do have issues with it because I think it's a bit messy as it goes on. The last half of the film kind of gets a bit lost and not sure where it's going to go, but I think that it is a good tense drama. It's really good at building tension in some scenes, and I think it's very nicely put together. And the only issue I really have with it is the overuse of slow motion for emphasis on certain shots when they could have done it differently, and it could have, because there was times when I was watching it in the cinema, I saw it, and it got unintentional laughter because of the slow motion, because it felt like it was trying to be slow motion for the sake of action rather than slow motion to actually make emphasis of the point it was trying to show. I mean, you see somebody and it slows down to let you see them. You see someone do something and it slows down because to build the tension, to make you think, oh god, this is going to happen. And it was never done in the right way to be using the slow motion for that reason.
For me, I think the biggest problem with the film is its tone. It just hasn't a clue what it wants to be, whether it wants to be a gritty 12-year kind of drama with thriller elements thrown into it, or whether it wants to be a violent 15-rated film. It straddles the line of a, no offence here, but a Luc Besson film at times. Right? It struggles with its identity. It just hasn't a clue where it wants to lie. The acting is fine in the film, and there are some decent set pieces in the movie, but
and there are it's just for its rating. There are some really gruesome, graphic, and quite sort of strong scenes.
Very unnecessarily, I felt like a lot of those graphic scenes could have easily been toned back, and the film itself would have easily been given a 12-year certificate. And so it's just the film, its identity, it just doesn't know what it wants to be. And number 2 is Inside Out.
which is the film I still haven't seen that I really want to see.
4th week at number 2 this film has spent. It hasn't it loves the number 2 spot. It's been at number 1 for a couple of weeks, but 4th week at number 2. It's a fantastic film, and at number 1 still there is Straight Outta Compton,
which I have to admit, I'm surprised it's done as well as it's done. I don't think it deserves to do that well. I don't think it's a bad film, but I do not think it's a number 1 film. I think that it's competently put together, it's smartly done, it's well directed to a certain point, but it is far too long. And the issue for me as well is that it's rap music, which I don't like, so I didn't connect with it. I guess maybe there's more people that are really into rap music and enjoy it, and maybe fans of NWA, which is why they went to see it, and that's why it's done so well. But I think that even fans that are really hardcore NWA fans will come out of this and be slightly disappointed, because it doesn't really sort of look into a lot of the whole thing of the rap culture and stuff as you want it to, especially given the 2.5 hours running time. You feel like it could have done more in its time. Definitely could have done a lot more in its time.
Well, we know it's not going to be there probably in next week's chart, because we've got a couple of big films that we're reviewing now, and the first film to kick off this week's show is probably the biggest of the week.
Yep, the Scorch Trials, or as it's been advertised, the Maze Runner, the Scorch Trials. Though I will note, when I saw it, it did come up at the beginning with the titles. It just came up, the Scorch Trials, which I kind of like that they're doing that, because the book is just called the Scorch Trials.
I think on IMDb it's just known as Maze Runner in the tiniest letters possible above the poster, and then, like you said, the more emphasising the Scorch Trials part, so like the Divergent Insurgent kind of series.
Yeah, but I do like the fact that, I'm just going to say that because that's one thing that stood out to me. It is directed by Wes Ball. It's based on the novel by James Dashner. It follows on from the Maze Runner with the character of Thomas and the few others that sort of escaped from the maze at the end of that film, without sort of spoiling anything. You have the whole thing of that they are then sort of taken to this sort of structure which is out in sort of a desert somewhere. They don't really know what's going on, don't know what's happened there, and they're sort of sent in and to this sort of room as they're walking along this area, and are being led by a man who explains exactly what's going on, well, in certain terms to them. Here's a clip.
You can call me Mr. Jansen. I run this place. Sanctuary. Safe from the horrors of the outside world.
Why are you helping us?
The fact that you kids can survive that damn virus makes you the best chance of humanity's continued survival. Unfortunately, it also makes you a target, as no doubt by now you've noticed. Beyond this door lies the beginning of your new lives.
So, here's the thing with Scorch Trials, because you have this whole thing of that they end up in this sort of place where they're told, or everyone will be called, given their names eventually, go to this place where it's a farm and people are being sort of looked after and such, and they learn very quickly that's not true. They escape, they go on the run through the desert, and the desert is actually, it's revealed to be what's left of cities. In particular, I think it's meant to be New York or maybe San Francisco, I'm not sure exactly, but basically they are wandering through this and bumping into certain people and characters trying to find their way to something. The whole thing then, I will say this, that the one thing that really just sort of changed the film then is the fact that it basically becomes World War Z. You have this whole thing of that there is a virus which is supposedly, it's called the flare virus, which is supposedly what is causing people to kind of turn into these creatures. You have people that are at different levels of this sort of metamorphosis into these creature things that are then chasing them at certain points. There's a sequence which is fairly well done, which is quite sort of tension building and quite dark, and it's in a sort of an old buried shopping centre, and they bump into a whole lot of these creatures and have to run for their lives. And then there's sequences like one where they're in the sewers, and there's these creatures that are completely fully CG'd, almost like the things in I Am Legend kind of level effect, chasing after them, and they're in the sewers being chased by them, and it just becomes this thing of they're running after this while supposedly this group Wicked that is involved in trying to find these children because of the fact of that they are supposedly the way into the future of the cure for this flare virus. And really a lot of it doesn't make sense. It does have at certain points you go, well, does that work for it? And you go, well, kind of, but there's other things in it that are just, it's weak elements that you think story elements could have been better. I don't know if this is an issue with the book or if it's just an issue with the film or if it's, you know, something in the adaptation of it or not. But the thing I got to say is that it's a sequel to these things, and you've got these young teen novels that have been adapted now as of The Hunger Games because of it did so well. And then we had Divergent in particular as well was another one, because we had other ones as well which didn't take off. And then the Maze Runner is another one which has gone and taken off, and it's now running its own thing. And Hunger Games was a great series so far, well done, solid, everyone. Divergent had a great first film, and the second film was poorly done but competent and ended well, and had it unfortunately went the whole thing of emphasis on action for the second film and less on the story and less on the whole thing of the world and what it's trying to do. And unfortunately Maze Runner does the same thing. It goes along the same route of turn into action sequences, chase sequences, and this thing going on, but it does have this little thing of, you know, the little horror aspect to it of that, in that the whole thing of Divergent, you had the films, they've all been 12A. The Hunger Games, the Divergent films, they've all been 12 so far. This is 12 as well. The Maze Runner films have been 12, but the thing is with the first Maze Runner, it was actually edited to get the 12 rating, and it was sound effects that were edited. And the thing is, the Maze Runner film, the first one, is quite a strong, terrifying film at times, and is definitely a 12 that is a 12, not a 12 and really take along kids that are younger. And Maze Runner is a 12 that is a 12 again. Sorry, Scorch Trials is a 12 that is a 12 again. So it's the same kind of level of thing. They've kept things up again, but they've decided they have dumbed it down a bit and gone, oh, we need to put in more action here. We need to make it, you know, on the run things. And so it's not as all over the place as Insurgent is in the Divergent films, but it is pretty close, unfortunately. It's not anywhere near to the Hunger Games sort of level in the way that the sequels are going, and I hope they improve whenever they do the next one. If they do the next one, I guess it will depend how well this does. But I'd like to see the next one, because the next one will be hopefully the final part of it, and it will be done. But it just has this whole thing of that there's elements in it when you get to a certain point and you go, oh, this is happening, do I care? No, not really. I've started to lose interest, and that's about halfway through the film, then you're in a problem.
I completely agree with you, actually. It's scary that we're getting into green territory again, but we were slightly interested to see in this because we did enjoy the Maze Runner. It had elements of it which made you intrigued about where the story is going next. And unlike, and very much like the Divergent, Insurgent, digestive, suggestive kind of series, this has gone and done exactly the same with what Insurgent did with the Divergent. It tries to take ideas, what it's established, and then just throws them out the window. Because I agree with you with the zombie-esque characters. There's something from World War Z mixed with the video game The Last of Us. Because The Last of Us, in there, they're known as cortisones, and these characters that they're humans that have been infected by this fungus-like disease, and it's slowly changed them into sort of like creatures that are more melded with the ground, so like with trees and with weeds and all that kind of stuff. And that's what they're exactly like in the sort of like the middle section of the Maze Runner when they get inside this a dilapidated, abandoned shopping mall that's now been completely covered in sand. And so that's it becomes The Last of Us, and the Last of Us mixed with TV program The Nightmare and The Crystal Maze. You expect Richard O'Brien to be at the end of it giving them a crystal saying congratulations. And then it decides to bring Aidan Gillian's character in from the start of the film back into the last little bit, make him evil, and you get that he is evil the second you see him. You know there's something wrong with the character, and it's not giving anything away that he's evil, and that's exactly what he is. And it just falls down into the pitfalls that Insurgent did, and the fact that it takes something interesting and makes it boring. Makes it excruciating, it makes it longer than the original one, and you're sitting there going, when are you going to end? Instead of adding stuff more onto the story and extending the story, and then doing an exact World War Z, where World War Z changed its tone in the last part of the film. That's exactly what this does. And so the film itself feels like 3 movies. You've got the continuation from The Maze Runner at the first third, you've got a horror film in the second third, and then you've got an action movie in the last third. and none of them melt together because the director just hasn't a clue how to stitch them together. He's even taken elements from Mad Max Fury Road with a big massive sandstorm and go, I'm just going to throw that into the pot as well because that worked brilliantly for that film, so it's going to work really well for this movie as well. Just think of something else to do, because this is the big problem with these teenage stories. They're now dumbing them down so much so that they're making them seem non-intelligent. We're hoping that the last Hunger Games film, which is out at the end of November, sort of like finishes on a high, because the previous one was actually interesting when you watch it a second time.
It is, yeah.
It's just the rest of these series, these teenage adventure movies, they're just boring now.
I don't know, boring, but I just think they kind of have lost their own identity, and they're trying to fit into too many other sort of genres and categories than they should be doing their own thing, and they're not.
Yeah, and before I get on to my next review, even the return of M. Night Shyamalan back to the big screen, I'm going to give you a piece of news that I've just seen. It's just broke in the last 10-15 minutes. That will give anybody nightmares.
Uh-oh, okay. I'm braced for it.
Disney and Rob Marshall are making a sequel to Mary Poppins.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say they're making a sequel to Into the Woods. I was worried then for a second.
No, Mary Poppins is getting a sequel.
Yeah, but that's not as bad as the thought of Rob Marshall. When I hear Rob Marshall, I just think Into the Woods. So, a sequel to Mary Poppins is not so much of a nightmare as that.
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare, that is. So, no. But I'll look at my film, the only film that I'm looking at this week, is M. Night Shyamalan back to movie-making direction now. Instead of producing films, he's gone back behind the camera to direct. And instead of going big budget, he's now working alongside Jason Blum, and so under Blumhouse Productions. So his budget has been stripped back to about $5 million. So it's him going back to the small budget stuff. And The Visit is not technically a horror. It's not technically a thriller. It's not technically a comedy as well. It just technically doesn't know what it wants to be. And the basic premise of the film is it centers around two kids played by Olivia de Jong, who plays Becca, and Ed Oxenbould, who we previously saw in Earth to Echo, who plays Tyler. And their mother has decided to send both kids off to their grandparents' house, which she wants them to spend a week with them because she's going off on a cruise. And so Becca comes up with a brilliant idea of, why don't we document everything? Because this is the first time that Becca and Tyler has actually seen their grandparents. It's the first time that their mother has had any contact whatsoever with their grandparents in about 15, 20 years after an incident that occurred, which forced her to move away. And so Becca and Tyler trundle off to their grandparents' house, and they think, they're a bit kooky because they act slightly strange, and they're pop-ups, who they constantly refer to throughout the film. He's holding a few secrets, maybe he's in a shed that he's keeping locked up. The grandmother acts really strange as well, playing hide and seek with them under their house, and constantly baking them cakes and cookies and stuff like that, and hijacking their laptop. Until one day, Tyler starts to suspect could be something else more sinister wrong with their grandparents. Here's a clip.
That's so weird, I can't see you.
I think I can clean it off.
Tyler, why are you quiet?
Ned and Pop-Up are acting strange. Ow.
Kind of strange. Becca, did you hit Tyler?
No.
Kids?
Pop-Up wears diapers and he keeps them in an outhouse, and Nana walks around at night without her clothes, and Pop-Up thinks strangers are following him.
I knew we were going to have this call. You're old, Tyler.
I've discussed this with him.
Old people have trouble with their bodies sometimes. They also aren't very self-aware. They can get paranoid, too. Becca, how strange are they acting?
They haven't been mean 1 second. Nana crawled after us under the house. Playing hide and seek.
You guys played hide and seek under the house? I used to love that!
Carrie Underwood.
Gee, just bear with it for a couple of days. My parents were strange back then. Mom was a hippie. She used to sunbathe in the backyard without warning back then.
I'm already partially blind.
I used to get so embarrassed. They're just weird people, honey. What level of problem is this?
1.
See? I miss you guys.
Now, the thing with The Visit is it hasn't a clue, like I alluded to at the start of the review, of what kind of film it wants to be. Constantly throughout the film, you've got the annoying Ed Oxenbould who raps. He can take any subject and raps about it, and he does this on multiple occasions, and every single occasion that he does it, you just want to stick your fingers in your ear and go la 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 constantly through it so you don't hear the annoyance from him. And then you had comedy elements to it where the film itself is trying maybe not to be a comedy, more to be giving you a bit of a chill, a bit of a creep, but you just cannot stop laughing. There is a scene where both Becca and Tyler are hearing a scratching noise outside their bedroom on a night time. They open the door, and there's their grandmother standing there completely naked, scratching at the wall like a randy cat. And it's just really disturbing from that point of view, seeing an 8-year-old woman's saggy bottom. You just go, oh, that's a horrible sight, rather than you just being scared. So you're just scared for that, and it just doesn't know what kind of tone it wants to be. Now, the thing with The Visit, when I went to see it at my local cinema, I've had a couple of occasions where my viewings have been spoiled by the absolute idiots that are at the screening. This has got to be by far the worst experience I've ever had at the cinema, because of the fact that everybody in the screening was texting on their phone, was talking throughout the movie. There was a few people who were sitting behind me, were shouting throughout the movie, sort of like broadcasting what they think is happening next. And it was so bad that it might have tarnished my thoughts about the film. Yet when I came out the cinema after being really fuming, I thought to myself, actually the film itself is bad. Because it is bad, and it just, down to the fact that the tone, it just hasn't a clue what it wants to be.
Okay, so is it... I mean, the thing as well, it's one of these ones that's it's filmed all kind of like found footage. I know you're going to probably say it's not found footage, but in found footage style, it's all handheld camera. The characters are actually, it's like Project Almanac kind of thing. So is it a film that's all filmed like that, or is it a film that there are sometimes normal sequences that are filmed like the camera's not there?
It's filmed from the point of view of the kids with the cameras, and you do see them every now and again. It's sort of like taking the diary principle that kids had in from the 40s leading up to the 90s, where they left all of their information in a diary. Now kids do it via their mobile phones or via video diaries, YouTubes, things like that, vlogs. And so it's very much like that. That's the day and age now. And so it's shot entirely on a camera and a camcorder, and it's just, honestly, it's bad. It's not M. Night Shyamalan's worst film. That still, for me, is sort of like tied between The Lady in the Lake, or The Lady in the Water, whatever it's called, and The Happening. Both of those films are atrocious movies. It's not that bad, but like I said, I tried my best not to let my experience in the cinema tarnish it, because it was just a bad experience, and my cinema has sort of like rectified that in a way, because I had to do something I've only ever done once, and that's complain. And the only way, because I was so angry when I went at the cinema, I didn't complain to the ushers in the foyer. I wrote an email to the cinema chain themselves, and they have turned around and says, as an apology, you can have your next movie on us for free. So I'm able to see Legend on Friday for nothing, which was nice of them. I wasn't expecting anything at all. But because of the fact that my experience of the movie was so angry, I had to vent it somehow, and so I had to send them a message. And they have said, if that happens in the future, get in contact with us, speak to somebody in the foyer. And it's only ever happened to me once before. I was eager to find out on Twitter if anybody's had that same kind of problem. If they've ever had to go to an usher and see how bad people are acting in a screening of a film. I was just interested. So if anybody's got any of those kind of stories, let us know on Facebook, Twitter. Facebook is at Monday Movie Show, and Twitter is at Monday Movie Show. So facebook.com/Monday Movie Show. Be eager to find out that. But the film itself, it doesn't do M. Night Shyamalan's early stuff like The Sixth Sense and Signs even justice, because he's a director who showed talent, and he showed that ingenuity. But then he tried to do lots of twists. The twists, by the way, there is a twist in this which you can see from a mile off. If you don't guess what the twist is, there is something seriously wrong with you. But he's just lost his way, and I was hoping teaming up with somebody like Jason Blum might have brought him back a little bit. And there are signs that he might be coming back a little bit, but it's just still a step in the wrong direction for him.
Okay, the next movie I'm going through is Legend. It is written and directed by Brian Helgeland. It's based on the book by John Pearson. It is the whole thing of the Krays. If you don't know who they are, then look it up, because you will be surprised. It's a film that's set during the 1960s in East End of London. You have identical twin gangsters, Reggie and Ronnie Kray, in the movie, both of whom are played by Tom Hardy, using effects to be able to shoot sequences and then edit it together to have him appear on screen as both of them at the same time. The film is centering around them, and in particular Ronald Kray's relationship with Frances, played by Emily Browning, who is basically a woman who he is sort of interested in and starts to build a relationship with, and then things get closer and closer, and at one point then takes her out on a date at this club that he owns, not really knowing that she knows more about him than he realises. Here's a clip.
Did I miss anything important?
No, just me.
That is important.
Is it?
Very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had your brother who was telling me that you were going to college, right, to study to be a secretary. Is that right?
Yeah, anything to get out of the East End.
Not so bad at East End.
Just got bigger dreams than pushing a pram or having with the butcher. Just don't quite know what they are yet.
Well, the East End's not that bad. The centre of the earth could get anywhere you like.
Even here?
Yeah, even here.
In Bethnal Green?
Yeah, Bethnal Green.
Do you like being a gangster?
I'm not a gangster. I'm a club owner. I like the money and I like the respect of being a club owner. I'm not a gangster.
So you have the whole thing of it following the two of them as brothers, and the whole thing of that you have Reginald, his brother, is a bit, well, mentally unbalanced. As we were introduced to him early on, we found out that he is actually at one point found to be clinically insane. Ronald, having seen him then put in an institute, has to do everything he does and basically blackmails and forces a doctor to certify him as sane again so he can get him out. And it's the whole thing of them and their sort of empire they're building, and the whole thing going on while also there being this relationship with Ronald and Frances. And there's all this thing of the three of them sort of together, and this whole thing of him dealing with his brother while also trying to have a life and live with Frances, and things sort of spiralling out of control. The thing is about it that I really, really love about it is the fact of the Tom Hardy is absolutely fantastic in it. Not in the one role, but in both roles. And the thing is, there are scenes where it's shot in a way, and I don't know what the budget is on it, but it's probably a smaller budget film, but they've filmed it and done it in a way very cleverly that you can have these shots where you have, nowadays it's very easy to do, you know, a person on the left, person on the right, and have them be the same person. And it works brilliantly in this, and you completely forget, you completely buy that Tom Hardy in the roles. You do not think of it as, oh, it's Tom Hardy and Tom Hardy. You think of it, this is Ronnie and Reggie Kray. This is them on the screen. There's sequences in it where you have this whole threatening violence to it, and it's rated 18 because it has a lot of violent scenes in it, and some really strong language at points, and some really, really violent sort of. There's a point in where there's a fight in a bar, and things are really, really quite graphic. But then at the same time, it mixes in a very lot of sort of inappropriate humour at parts like this as well. I mean, you have the whole sequence of the Reggie Kray turns up at the place at a bar with them there, the two of them there, and he's expecting a shootout, and he holds up his sort of his jacket, pointing it like guns, saying, you know, a shootout's a shootout. I'm expecting a shootout, not a chat, and this kind of thing going on, and it genuinely does make you laugh at just how ridiculous that is, even though it probably is very accurate at certain things. The one thing that I do have an issue with it is that, because I mean it is, I'll put it this way, I'll explain a bit more though in a minute. It is an average film, but it is elevated to a great height by the performances in it, by Tom Hardy in both roles, by Emily Browning in the film, by Paul Bettany in a small role, and in particular as well, you've got in there David Thewlis, who plays a character that is sort of helping the Krays and works with the Krays, and is there sort of his financial advisor sort of thing, and all of those performances all come together to make a really solid, great film. The one thing that I do have an issue with, and I wish there'd been a bit more of it in there, is you have Christopher Eccleston plays a policeman who is trying to catch the Krays and try and catch them at it, get investigating the things, and I think his character gets very sort of left by the wayside for most of the film, and I think we could have had him in there a bit more to show more sort of the whole thing of the police progress on things and how things were going and whatnot and such. But I mean, that's a small point for the film. It is very well done, very well handled, and it's a dark, violent, at sometimes comedy, at sometimes disturbing, and at all times engrossing and entertaining film.
Yeah, I've yet to see it. Does it actually teach you something different from what we've seen from the Krays? Because there has been obviously the Krays, which was released in the 80s, and a couple of weeks ago you had that direct-to-DVD Krays movies, probably just to cash in on this, because they thought, if we get a head start on it, people would be more interested in our direct-to-DVD movie rather than what's out in the cinema. But that's evidently it seemed to have worked, because it's still in the Blu-ray and DVD top 10, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But does it bring any different light to them? Because the fact that, from what I could see from the trailer, it felt different. It looked different to what I saw, because it seemed to bring out the humour a little bit more in one of the Kray twins. Because if you've watched any of the previous dramas relating to them, it just seemed to be all a very straight violent drama. Whereas this one, it seems to add a bit more character to it.
It does. It certainly does. And the thing is, it's a film which, as I say, it focuses around the performances and the characters. In particular, it's more about the brotherly bond of the two, and the whole thing of them. And you had the whole thing of that at certain points, Ronald obviously knows and looks at Reggie and knows there's problems with him. He needs to be sort of brought a bit under control. But at the same time, there's one point in the film where someone says to him, I want to speak to you privately without your brother, because your brother's a problem. We need to do something about him. And he turns around to him and basically says, I can't do that. He's my brother. And it's basically, it's all about that. That sentence basically encapsulates the whole film. But it's the whole thing of the tension of the two of them, how Reggie sometimes would go too far. There's at one point, I mean, there's even you've probably seen the trailer, there's a little bit where there's a fight between the two of them, and it's really well handled, because it's the fact of that it's the two of them fighting, and then something that one of them does during it becomes funny but violent in a very dark, twisted way. And then you have things that go on, and it's two brothers fighting, so it's that kind of a thing. And it is the interpersonal relationships is what the whole film is about. And I think if it didn't have that, if it didn't have Tom Hardy doing that and the performances there, then it would be a very, very average, possibly even below average film. But as it stands, it's a really good watch.
Could you have seen somebody else actually take the role of Tom Hardy's in this one? It would have been really difficult for them, because, again, going back to the 80s Kray films, it was brothers who'd done it from Spandau Ballet, but it was actually two brothers rather than one actor playing two lead characters in a film. And
he plays them, as I said, he plays them with... You look at them and you think they're individual people. You don't think it's the same guy, one of them wearing glasses, one of them not. You don't think that. He completely inhabits each character separately. And I don't know that there's anyone else I can think of that I'd go, I buy them in that role. Tom Hardy, I wasn't sure until I saw the film whether or not I was going to buy Tom Hardy in both the roles, and I did. And I don't know if there'd be anyone else now that I would go, yep, that's it. I don't know if I would. I don't think I would.
Well, you've got one more film to look at.
Yep, Irrational Man, which is the latest from Woody Allen, who is not one of my favourite writers and directors. In this film, we have the whole thing of it follows around the character of Abe, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who is a professor who's been brought into a new sort of role at philosophy at a college. And amongst all his students, you have Jill, played by Emma Stone, who is one of his students who sort of gets his stuff. He reads one of her papers and he's very impressed by it. He ends up sort of striking up a really good close friendship with her, and the two of them sort of end up hanging around a lot outside of college time and at college. Things are also going on. The problem, though, he is basically a drunk. He is very misanthropic about his work and about his life and about how things are in the world and his views on things that affect his sort of, his philosophy. He is also in this sort of weird relationship with one of the women who works at the college, who is another teacher, and she's kind of having an affair with him at the same time as he's sort of doing all this, and he really is basically very much a broken man until sort of an event happens later on in the film. Here's a clip.
How's it coming?
Blocked. Can't write.
Why?
I can't write because I can't breathe.
What would get you breathing again?
The will to breathe. Inspiration.
You need a muse.
I've never needed a muse before.
So the whole thing of that, there is this whole thing of that one day him and Jill are sitting in a restaurant. They're talking about things of their philosophy and their friendship things, and all of a sudden she says, "Are you realising what's going on at this table behind us?" And he's like, "No," sits over next to her, and you hear the two of them listening to this conversation of 4 people at the table behind them, all around this one woman who is basically going through a real tough time because she's been taken to court for parentage things of her kids. Her ex-husband is going to win because of the fact that his lawyer is friends with the judge. The judge is a very sort of not particularly highly thought of judge, and this woman is at her wit's end. She's not going to be able to get her kids anymore and see them or anything, and Abe realises that there is this whole thing of what he can do. He would not have any connection to it or anything. He could actually kill the judge, make this woman's life and other people's who this judge has affected, make them all better, just by this act of killing him, and there being no connection between him or the judge because of the fact that he doesn't know him, and it would be this whole thing, and he becomes obsessed with this thought. And this thought drives him and makes him then realise, and he wakes up and he's happy and everything, and it's this whole thing of the way this affects his mental thought and his opinion of the world and such, and he starts to sort of consider planning this. And it's a very weird sort of twist and turn that the film takes at this point, because honestly up to that point I was not massively impressed with Joaquin Phoenix's performance. I thought he was just doing the kind of the drunk performance that he was doing like he did in The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson's film, and it was a very kind of line of him treading that again. I honestly started thinking, well, he's just doing that role again. And then this thing happens in the film, and he starts to change, and you have a completely different character, and it's like a person coming out of their shell and that changing, and this whole thing of him and Jill and their friendship as well, and everything like that at the same time. And it then suddenly became, it was like, oh, this is really actually pretty good. And I started getting into it, and I enjoyed it, and it's witty, it's funny, it's a bit dark humoured at times. It's not a big standout film. I don't think it's going to be a massive fan for a lot of Woody Allen, a massive film for a lot of Woody Allen fans, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. It did get me giggling a bit. It's not a comedy. It's not an outright out comedy. It is a drama, and there's little bits of comedy in it. But it was a film that it gripped me, and it held me for the running time, which is an hour and 30 odd minutes, and I had a perfectly fine time with it. It's nothing outstanding, but it's an okay film, and it has decent performances in it and some good laughs along the way. Are you still there? I believe I've lost Stuart.
No, sorry. I had my mic muted because I was coughing and I didn't unmute my mic. Genius.
I thought we were going to have the same problems we had last week.
No, it's fine. Yeah, but I asked a question. I was wondering why I didn't get an answer, and so it was just strange, no reply. What happened? Then I looked and thought, yep, I've got the mic muted.
I'm going
Brilliant.
to get you one of these lights that hooks up to it, so when you're muted, you're going to be lit up or something. Have a red light on.
Big, massive, red, illuminate light, or so like a boxing glove comes out the screen or something like that to make sure that I'm awake.
What was your question?
It was just, what about if you're not a Woody Allen fan?
Well, I mean, I'm not a Woody Allen fan. And that's the thing. I liked A Midnight in Paris, which a lot of Woody Allen fans didn't like. They found it to be a film that I think was the very odd one that round. And the other film of his that I saw, I can't remember what it was. It was a film a little bit after that came out on DVD. And it was in Greece, and it was a one with Alec Baldwin, I can't remember, and Jesse Eisenberg as well. But I didn't mind that, but I didn't love it. It was a very messed up film, I thought, and I think that maybe was a bit more fans of Woody Allen enjoyed that more. I think this one will be liked by them more than Midnight in Paris, but I don't think it's going to be loved by them as all of his other films are.
Yeah, I'm to be honest, I just have no inclination to watch him. I just don't find these movies funny. I just don't find him an interesting director, even though at the age that he's at, he still directs one film every single year, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel I'm even starting to turn into him but I feel his movies just have exactly the same kind of feel to them, and there's just no interest in them whatsoever. But this is not going to change that, is it? No?
Probably, no, it's not. It's going to be... I mean, I think if you're not into Woody Allen's films at all, this isn't going to win you over like... this isn't necessarily going to win you over like Midnight in Paris, but I think if you don't like his films and you're thinking, you know what, I might give it a shot, then you might walk out and go, you know what, that was an hour and a half. I've spent worse in an hour and a half, which, you know, you can say that with a lot of films. Which
I watched The Visit.
But it's an okay film. I enjoyed it, and the performances are really good in it. And it's nothing especially brilliant, but it does come together. It doesn't have flaws like a lot of films do.
Right, that's it for the cinema section. We'll be back in a moment with the home release section.
From page to screen. So they have 9 times out of 10 they have to send it back to you unopened or just throw it in the garbage can.
Things don't always look exactly as we envision our life to look, but sometimes it works out and turns out even better.
Gregor Fisher, his bacon number is 2 because he was appeared with January Jones in Love Actually, and January Jones and Kevin Bacon appeared in X-Men First Class together.
I've got to say, the very Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas, now that just makes me want to rush out.
It's about the acting, about the writing. That's really what theatre is for me.
Probably had more names than Prince or whatever. Never mind, there's a joke for the oldies. It'd be like, who's Prince? Who's he? I'd just like to see Mr. Freeze hiring his bad guys going, right, okay, so you're a psycho, right, can you ice skate? Head over to iTunes, Spreaker and Stitcher and put in the search box From Page to Screen.
And we're back with this week's Monday Movie Show and with the home releases section, which we're going to be covering not a lot of films, but some that pack a bit more punch than others.
Yeah, Joss Whedon's final foray into directing in the Marvel Universe with Avengers Age of Ultron. We have, and then going up against that, there's not very many big films out this week, but a couple of interesting ones, which include The Age of Adeline, very intriguing documentary in Citizen 4, and then to round things off, horror movie The Canal.
Yep, before that, as usual, we'll go on to look at the DVD and Blu-ray top 10, starting at number 10 with Child 44.
Tom Hardy has just proven himself to be a really good actor in Legend, from what Andy gathered. He's not he's not so much with Child 44. It's a bit of a messy film. It doesn't, again, it's tonally, it's just hasn't a clue what it wants to be. It's not very well put together, and it's just not interesting at all.
Interstellar is at the same place it was last week at number 9.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going slightly cheap or something like that, but yeah, it's fine. It's not the brilliant magnum opus that a lot of people made it out to be from Christopher Nolan, because it suffers from a really dodgy last 20 minutes. The last 20 minutes just makes you scratch your head a lot, and I still stick by my qualm with the film, where the father-daughter relationship is very loose and not very well told, but there is still a lot to like about the film.
A Royal Night Out's new entry at number 8.
I've not yet seen it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's a film that you very kind of come out of going, well, yeah, okay, but yeah, and you'll be like that all the way through it. It will nag at you just how much of it you kind of don't buy and you don't get, and so it's a film that it's one of these ones where you can't get past the sort of the implausibility of it to really get in with it and enjoy it. But it's okay. It's not a bad film. It's just honestly the way through it, you go, do I buy that? Number 7, new entry for The Forger, which I don't think you've seen either, have you?
Nope.
No, it's really a very straight-to-video DVD film. It is not a career worst for John Travolta, but it's definitely not a career best. And it's just a very typical subpar thriller that's really... It's not worthy of anything. It's one to really pass over and gloss over, I'm afraid. Number 6, dropping down slightly, is 50 Shades of Grey.
Did you see the news story revolving around Charlie Hunnam, who was supposed to have been in 50 Shades of Grey?
I didn't know.
It was late last week where he released, there was a news story was released of him saying that how disappointed he was in the fact that he wasn't in 50 Shades of Grey because he was really looking forward to playing the part of the lead role in it. He definitely dodged a bullet. He majorly dodged a bullet with 50 Shades of Grey. He should now look at it and think, oh God, I'm definitely glad I went off to do stuff like Pacific Rim rather than get my kit off for 50 Shades of Grey. Because he said he had no problems with that because his big acting debut was in the 90s drama Queer as Folk. And so he made in that, and yeah, that was revealing in a way, much more so than 50 Shades of Grey. So he has no qualms with that. It's just the fact that he said it would have been interesting if he did it. And I thought it might have been slightly more interesting in the film if Charlie Hunnam was in it, because he's a good actor. I've seen bits of Sons of Anarchy, and so he's a really good actor. But what was produced in 50 Shades of Grey, it should never be reproduced.
New entry at number 5 for Unfriended.
Yeah, it's a Skype movie, which on a micro budget, especially when it comes to Hollywood, because this was shot on a $1 million budget, and that's micro when it comes to them. It's very well implemented. I thought the film itself had some interesting ideas. The group dynamic, the way it fractures and the way it plays out is really well. It has a couple of moments where you're not expecting things to happen, and when stuff starts to crumble, you want to follow the story on even more so. So I thought it was handled pretty well, with some fantastic cinematography.
Also, new entry at number 4 is the Fast and Furious 7 movie collection, which we'll get to probably in a little bit. Number 3 is Rise of the Krays.
Yeah, this was the one that I was alluding to when you were reviewing Legend, the fact that it was out a couple of weeks before Legend came out, just to sort of like coattail on the bandwagon of it. Direct-to-DVD British gangster film. There is a load of these out. There is more coming out in the coming weeks as well. From what I can gather from this one, it just doesn't look anywhere near as good as Legend.
Cinderella dropping down from last week's number 1 to number 2.
Boring, really.
Boring, really. Okay, I still haven't seen it, but I do want to see it. I'm curious, but I'm less curious than I was with other films. Which means a new entry at number 1 is Fast and Furious 7, as if there was ever any doubt.
Yeah, there was just definitely no doubt whatsoever that this would be number 1 this week, because it's probably sold millions of copies, and it's a good film. We've said what we can say about Fast and Furious 7. It has its problems with its structure, the fact that it's got too many characters, the fact that James Wan only decides to tie them together properly in the last third of the film. That's when it starts to feel more like a Fast and Furious movie. It's just there's too many character strands and story strands in the first 2/3 to make this elevated to the heights of Fast and Furious 5 and 6, even though 6 I think is slightly weak. Fast 5 is the best in the series. It doesn't get anywhere near that. So it's got problems, but it manages to pay it off in the end, and it's a nice end to Paul Walker's career. It's a nice fitting end to his career.
Yep. So let's get going on to the films, which mostly this week is going to be you, except for me doing one of them. So I'll let you go straight into the first one.
Yeah, it's sort of like a flip on the cinema section. But the big film of the week is The Canal. No, it isn't. It's Avengers Age of Ultron, directed by Joss Whedon and starring everybody's favourite superheroes. And at the start of the film, Joss Whedon makes sure that you get to see everybody's favourite superheroes, because you've got this huge, massive set piece. Even before you've got Avengers Age of Ultron's ident pop up on the screen, you've got all the Avengers going up against Strucker at this Hydra base in Sokovia to try and capture back Loki's scepter, because there's something about Loki's scepter that could help Iron Man and Hulk create a more sentient AI. They've got obviously Jarvis, who can think a lot for himself. However, the stone that's part of Loki's scepter can create something much better, something that they were coming up with, an idea where they can create much more intelligent AIs. And unfortunately, this AI goes rogue. Obviously that was going to happen, so it's up to the Avengers to stop them, and helping Ultron, which is this AI, is to sort of like, now we're not allowed to call them mutants because that's an X-Men territory, and so they're sort of like humans with more powers than superheroes.
Yeah, I think they're referred to as enhanced.
Yeah, and so it's just weird calling them enhanced. I want to call them mutants, but we're not allowed to. And they're played by Scarlett Johansson. Not Scarlett Johansson. I bet she wishes that she was in there. But Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And the clip is them meeting Ultron for the first time.
You're wondering why you can't look inside my head.
Sometimes it's hard. But sooner or later, every man shows himself.
Oh, I'm sure they do. But you needed something more than a man. That's why you let Stark take the scepter.
I didn't expect. But I saw Stark's fear. I knew it would control him, make him self-destruct.
Everyone creates the thing they dread. Men of peace create engines of war. Invaders create Avengers. People create smaller people. Children. I lost the word there. Children. Designed to supplant them, to help them end.
Is that why you've come? To end the Avengers?
I've come to save the world. But also, yeah.
Now, the thing with Age of Ultron is it's full of loud bangs, whoosh, wallops, all that kind of stuff. You expect a Batman, kapow, and all that thing to pop up on the screen every now and again. But
wrong comic, don't do that.
I know, I just thought to see how many angry messages I get, but I don't care. I was expecting that kind of thing to pop up, but that never occurs, which is a good thing in a way. And Joss Whedon just decided to turn everything up to 11 stupid, because that's what most of the film is like. The sarcasm is now being injected into everybody's bloodstream, and so it's no longer Iron Man's duty to be the sarcastic one. Everybody's allowed their moment in the sun, and so you've got a quirky script in a way. You've got a bad guy who decides to recite poetry more so when he speaks, rather than speaking like a natural human or natural AI, and so at least it's not as one-dimensional as most bad guys that flitter and float throughout the Marvel universe, because that seems to be the problem with Marvel films. And so at least Ultron, who was voiced by James Spader, has got a bit of gravitas to him. It's like if you made Shakespeare into a robot, a psychopathic robot, you've got Ultron. And so it's fine on that front there. And so the film itself is very loud. It's very over the top. You've got huge, massive, explosive set pieces. You've got parts of the movie where it calms down, especially there's a scene which reminds you, it goes from a big blockbuster to Little House on the Prairie, where you've got all of them going to Jeremy Renner's, who plays Hawkeye's, family's house, and so you expect them to hoe the fields and start planting crops and just sit there with a piece of corn sticking out of their mouth, playing a banjo on the porch, rocking backwards and forwards. Do you remember what happened a couple of weeks ago when we went for Loki's stuff? Just reminiscing about the past, drinking moonshine. That's the sort of like scene where it just dies down a little bit, and then they realise, we've still got to kick bottom because Ultron's out there. Let's blow up a big, huge, massive houses and pull ground up huge, massive places up from the ground. And yeah, so it never forgets what kind of film it is. It's okay, it's entertaining enough. It has problems in the fact that like with all these kind of films, there's so many characters in the movie, it doesn't know what to concentrate on more so. It tries its best to allude onto the characters who are going to be part of the next Avengers films and put the main characters that we're so used to more so in the background, because it's time to pass the baton on to a new generation of Avengers. And so it tries to do that the more it goes through the film. But Joss Whedon has decided to step down from them now. He's had enough, and which is good for him. He needs to actually go and do something different. And he's gone out on a bit of a bang, a firework kind of bang, but it's not as good as Avengers, but it's still entertaining enough.
I agree it's not as good as Avengers. It doesn't quite reach the heights as Avengers does, but it's a case of the whole thing I keep saying about this is with Avengers, the first one, is that it was basically the first one to bring all these characters together and put them into one film and do it successfully to such a point that it was really kind of just a big ecstasy of a movie. And you had this whole thing of them all coming together and working together, and it worked in the film. This is just more of the same, and it's not going to be hitting the same heights of that because of the fact that you can't really duplicate that very easily and very simply, and that's the problem with it. But I don't think that it's a problem. As I said, I expected it to be more of the same. It is more of the same. It's what I got. I've enjoyed it, and I go along with it, and I'm happy to see more of it. And I do hope they come up with something different for the future ones, because we've got this whole thing of the villain, as you said, is a bit off. But other than that, I didn't have a massive problem with it. I thought it was perfectly fine, and I'm glad to have it as part of my collection, of part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's nice that they've also expanded on Paul Bettany's character, allowed him to breathe a little bit more, because even though I'm not going to spoil anything, just in case people might not have seen the film, just in case, there's probably a couple of people who's living under a rock at the moment who's not seen it. But yeah, it's nice to see him in the film rather than just hear him. Yeah. And so, because I like Paul Bettany. Paul Bettany, even though Mordecai is a horrible, horrible movie,
is the best thing about that film. Yeah.
He definitely is the best thing about Mordecai. But yeah, it's nice to see more of him. But I sort of I'm glad that he's decided to step away from stuff now. Joss Whedon. He was obviously he'll have a production credit on everything else to do with Avengers movies, and he's passed it on to the Russo brothers with the two-parter Avengers films, the Infinity War, which comes out in the end of 2017, isn't it, or end of 2016 when we get them. And then they've
got, of course, the next Captain America film, which should be the next film released by Marvel,
which is Avengers Part 3, because the amount of characters in that is just ridiculous in the next Captain America movie. But I'm glad that Joss Whedon has decided to hang up his hat and maybe he's going on to other things, because he's inventive when he creates something new and different, not following the same thing he's done prior.
Anyway, moving on to the next film, which is The Age of Adaline. It's directed by Lee Toland Krieger. It is a movie which is following the character of Adeline Bowman, who played by Blake Lively, who we're introduced to early in the 20th century, I can't remember what years, I think it's about 1910 or 12, something like that. After an accident where her car is sort of crashed off the road into a river, she is at the same point of that she's drowning. Her car is then struck by lightning. This electrifying her, as we're told in voiceover, causes an effect which is not discovered until later in the 21st century, which essentially stops her from aging any further. The whole thing is then the film follows her and her life until many, many years later in present day. She is now still living the age she is. She's seeing her daughter, who is now fully grown up and much, much older than her visually, and is basically going through her life that she has, which is very closed off. She doesn't really connect with people. She doesn't really make any point of having relationships with people because of the fact of that she really is so much older, even though no one has any idea, until she meets the character of Ellis, played by Mikkel Huisman. I'm not sure I pronounced that right or not, but I won't try again. And he kind of starts to win her over and win her affections, and things getting a bit interesting between the two of them, until the issue when he takes her to meet his father. Here's a clip.
Forget where we live?
No.
This is my dad, William. Dad, this is
Adeline.
Jenny, actually. Dad, you okay?
I'm sorry, it's just... You look exactly like this old friend of mine, Adeline Bowman.
His father being played by Harrison Ford, and as you heard in that clip, he recognises her instantly, even though she denies it and plays it down. There's this whole thing of then, meeting someone from her past who does clearly recognise her. And the thing is, the film has this great premise, this great simple idea of this never aging and the issue of that, but doesn't really capitalise on it. It's a film that it meanders and wanders and dilly-daddies, and then nothing really happens for a large part of it. And then this sort of question starts to happen about that, and it starts to potentially open up these doors, and you think it's maybe going to go somewhere, and it just doesn't. It's like as I said earlier with another film, it fizzles out. It just didn't really capitalise on the great idea that it has and the potential that was there. It's a film that has a decent performance, everyone. It has a decent performance from Harrison Ford. It's not a fantastic performance from Harrison Ford. It's not Harrison back as we've seen him before, but it's one that actually made me take note of, Harrison Ford's actually acting again. And it's a film that I found it was perfectly fine. It wants to be charming, it wants to be sweet, it just can't get there. And that's the problem with it. It's 2 hours just under, and it needed to be a little bit shorter, but do more with its time and not just fill up the time. It would have been nice to see more of the challenges of someone who's not aging and that going on, and it just never ever does that. I honestly sat there and I thought, by the end of it, I looked back in it, I thought, what have you done with 2 hours? Because it was just missing so much that they could have put in there. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just that it's very, very underwhelming.
I hate films which make you feel like that, make you feel underwhelmed, because at least if you see a bad film, you've got some sort of like anger there, and you can vent it, you can feel what, you can definitely say why it's bad. And when you see a good film, you feel really happy for seeing it. Seeing an average movie and a movie that makes you feel underwhelmed, it questions what was the director doing, what was the director thinking.
It's just a shame that I would have just taken it in a different direction. I would have focused on different parts of it, and I think if that was the case, if it did those changes, it would have been a more engrossing, more interesting film. As it is, it's not a dud, but it's a film that doesn't live up to what it could have been.
Yeah, it sounds from what I'm gathering from you that it's got an interesting premise, but it never fulfills that premise at all.
Yeah, it's a great premise, and it's not one that we've really seen in a lot of films.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 films to do. I'm actually going to throw the two films, The Citizen 4 and The Canal, and normally I would end off on the Bargain Basement movie of the week, but I'm actually going to do that first, just to flip things around, because it's such a small film. And so The Canal is a small British film directed by Ivan Kavanagh. It stars Rupert Evans, who plays David, and Antonio Campbell Hughes, who plays Claire. And now David is in a relationship with a woman. He suspects that she might be having an affair, and so he decides to set up cameras in his apartment to record what's going on. He does end up catching her out, and then she runs away. Then the next year, her body is discovered in the canal, and he is the suspect. He is the person who is the police think that he's actually killed his wife in a fit of rage for discovering this relationship. And so it's up to the police to find out what's going on. Throw into the mix, though, a supernatural being who could be the one who's responsible for it, and you have an absolute mess of a movie. Because that's what you've got. You've got a movie that has 2 different elements to try and blame the husband, and never does anything with either one of the elements. The supernatural part, because he discovers that the house where they live in, surprisingly, a murder happened there, and there's an evil spirit abound. And also, you've got this police officer who hasn't a clue what he's doing, who brings in another character who's played by Antonia Campbell-Hughes, who she fought for David in a very tricky, weird love sort of like triangle in a way, because his dead wife still needs to... The reason why she's dead needs to be found out for that, and she's trying to flirt with him as well and discovering creepy secrets to do with the house, but also try to have a police presence involved, and it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess of a movie. It's not scary. There's no tension in it at all. Nothing works. The worst thing, Antonia Campbell-Hughes, she's really weird to look at. If you've watched Cara Delevingne in a movie, she has the strangest eyebrows, and you're constantly fixated on her eyebrows. With Antonia Campbell-Hughes, unfortunately, you're fixated constantly on her face because she looks like a China doll who's just about to collapse. And she's a weird-looking actress. No offence to her if she's listening, no chance in that. But she's a weird actress, and you're more fixated on her appearance rather than the film itself, and it shows you how interesting the film is. It's terrible.
Okay, and the other film that you've got to go?
Citizen 4, which is a documentary which we very rarely get to do these days on the show. I can't even remember the last time we did a documentary.
Well, I did one. I did Precinct... I can't remember the number. Precinct 15 or something like that. I can't remember the number of it, but I did that a few weeks ago.
Something to do with a precinct. But in this case... Citizen 4 is the third part of a trilogy of movies centering around... It's by documentary filmmaker Laura Poitras, and it's all about the events that happened after 9/11 and how America became very sort of like apparent that there are nasty people out there, more so, but they are on high alert on absolutely everything. And in this case, it centers around, like I said, documentary filmmaker Laura Poitras, who's out there to try and discover what the American government is actually up to. And she gets a tip-off about somebody who's called Edward Snowden. And so the film itself is following Edward Snowden and the secrets that he's divulging about the American government. Here's a clip.
To be sort of curtailed and reined in and dialed back, and actually get worse, particularly drone strikes, which I also learned at NSA we could watch drone videos from our desktops. As I saw that really hardened me to action.
In real time?
In real time, yeah. It'll stream a lower quality of the video to your desktop. Typically, you'd be watching surveillance drones as opposed to actually, murder drones where they're going out there to bomb somebody. But you'll have a drone that's just following somebody's house for hours and hours, and you won't know who it is because you don't have the context for that. But it's just a page where it's lists and lists of drone feeds in all these different countries under all these different code names, and you can just click on which one you want to see.
Now, the thing with Citizen 4 is it's all about the NSA and how they tap into every piece of resource that they've got to try and track down terrorists, but how much they are impeding on people's just lives. The fact that they put back doors into email programs, into search engines to try and discover every morsel of information. There is a startling fact through the film where they have these 20 bases throughout America which surveys through everybody's emails and everybody's messages on Facebook and things like that. And they can go through a terabyte of data every second. That's not every minute, it's a terabyte of data they sift through every second. And in America there is a law which was passed where the government and the NSA especially need to get approval from the High Court to be able to tap into people's phone lines, to be able to raid people's houses and things like that to gather information. Whereas in the rest of the world, the NSA are able to do that with no problems whatsoever. And it really makes you think about life and society and how you use technology. Because technology is a fantastic asset, yet it's something that destroys everybody's life. And watching something like this really makes you creepy about your mobile phone usage. Every single time you switch on your phone and send a message to your friend, it makes you think, who's actually listening into this message? Every phone call you make makes you skeptical about what's going on. And it's all thanks to 9/11 and the way the NSA works. And Snowden was the person who sort of like blew this all open. He worked alongside Julian Assange with WikiLeaks. As a matter of fact, Julian Assange had to help Snowden get away from Tokyo, from Japan, to seek refuge in places like Russia, where he was granted asylum for a year. So the American government couldn't actually track him down to try and extract any kind of information from him, to hold him against trial about what he's done. And so the documentary is extremely fascinating. It will creep the hell out of you, and it will make you scared to switch on your computer again, to switch on your phone again, to even just write a letter in a way. The oldest form of communication, writing a letter, still could be poured upon by the government. They would find ways of being able to read your personal information from that. And it makes you think, we're in a Big Brother society where everybody is watched. And if you're not scared, there's something seriously wrong. And so this film is scarier than most horror movies, because it makes you sit up and think about how what you see. Even the show that we've done now, I mentioned in the last 5 minutes during my review there about the American government. They could be bursting through my flat door any minute now and arresting me for bad-mouthing them in a way because I've used the word America a few times, and they could be pinpricking their ears up because their country isn't mentioned. And so it's just, that's even alluded to in the documentary every single time their country's mentioned. They're trying to find a source and trying to find out what's being talked about them. It's a scary documentary, but it's really captivating and very intriguing.
Okay, so that's it for this week's show. We're coming up to the end of the show. Before that, though, we've got a couple of things to go through. As usual, TV movies of the week. So you said you just got one this week.
One, yes.
Okay. Will you go for your one? Because I've actually got three.
Well, you might as well go for your three, because I doubt you'll actually get the one that I've got.
We'll see. What one have you got?
No, you first.
No, you first.
This is childish. Yeah, America. Go on, go first.
No, you go first. I'm hosting, so you'll go first.
This is really childish, this. But mine is on Film 4. No surprise there. On Wednesday the 16th.
Okay.
At 11:20 at night.
Ah, okay.
Now, it's a film you've not seen, but I've seen, and it's an amazing movie. It's The Kings of Summer. I absolutely love this film, directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts, who is doing the new King Kong movie. And this one, it reminded me a lot of watching Stand By Me. It's about three kids growing up during summer, them building forts, and how their friendship sort of like disintegrates over time. But it's fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I watched this movie after hearing really good things about it, and I'm glad I definitely did. I highly, highly recommend The Kings of Summer.
Okay, one of mine is the film just immediately preceding that. But first of all, I've got Man on a Ledge, which is a film. It's not a fantastic film, but it's a film that we both admit was an entertaining hour and a half's time. And it's a different kind of thriller with a little twist to it and such. And it was okay. It's also shown. It's shown Tuesday, the 15th September at 9 o'clock on Film 4. It's also shown Sunday the 20th at 10:40 p.m. on Film 4. The one that precedes your film on the Wednesday at 9 o'clock is Rush on Film 4, the Wednesday the 16th. And the final film I've got, which is my favourite of the few, is on BBC Two, Friday night the 18th of September at midnight. So it's Friday night, Saturday morning, midnight, and that is Winter's Bone.
Okay, I've not seen it yet.
It's the one that basically started off Jennifer Lawrence's career. And it's a good sort of, it's a weird redneck sect drama, but it's about her basically trying to find out what happened to her father for certain reasons. And I won't go into it any further than that, other than to say it is a film which got a lot of sort of recognition at Oscar time, and it's not necessarily an Oscar great film, but it is a good solid film. And it's a very indie film as well.
I think from the two movies that we've chosen, Winter's Bone and The Kings of Summer, I think that might be the first time we've chosen them. And it's interesting that we've gone with much more smaller indie kind of films rather than like a big blockbuster movie or a movie that a lot of people know about. So it wasn't a big. It's not a big week for movies out on TV, but I think we've chosen two interesting films there. I'll give Winterborn a watch because I've not seen it, and so it might go hand in hand perfectly well with The Kings of Summer.
Yep, and being on BBC Two as well, no adverts.
Well, The Kings of Summer does have adverts, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's it for this week's show. Thank you for joining us live. A couple of people have joined us and chatted back to us in the chat. If you're not listening to us live, then remember you can always join us on Monday nights and join us live. Give us some feedback. Email us at mondaymovieshow@yahoo.com. I forget, is it .com or .co.uk?
.com.
It's .com. mondaymovieshow@yahoo.com. You can tweet us at Monday Movie Show. You can tweet Stuart directly at Cryptic Tadpole. You can tweet me directly at AHDVD. And you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Monday Movie Show. We'll be back next week. I say we, but it will be Stuart.
Hello.
Possibly on his own. If not, he's going to try and see if he can get a guest host to join in place of myself because I am otherwise engaged.
Literally.
Yes. So I will be on my way after I've given you a couple other things. One is a shout out to followingthenerd.com and from page to screen.com. We still don't know yet if Following the Nerd is going to be sorting out something, but I do believe they do still want to do some kind of a show after.
All I know is that I've been in conversation with Mark. Yeah. And we are planning an end of year show kind of thing, but a huge massive hoopla one. So the Monday Movie Show teaming up with Following the Nerd to do an end of the year spectacular.
Awesome. We shall have to be looking at that. But,
and it should be much more stable as well, because if you listen to Following the Nerd, no offence to them, but their internet connection was very shoddy, and so we can handle more people in the Skype chat through us because Andy's got a really good internet and mine's tolerable. But yeah, we should be able to get them in there with no problems whatsoever, because I've done a show where we've had 5 people and there was very little cut out. Well, Bouncy was cutting out all the time, but his connection's worse than mine.
So we'll keep an eye out on that, because we'll announce that as soon as we have more details and get things like that sorted out. The other thing I got to do before we round up and go is Movie of the Week.
Citizen 4. Easily Citizen 4.
Citizen 4, okay. For me, it is Legend. So that's it for this week's show. We'll be back. Well, Monday Movie Show will be back next week. I'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Which is the weird thing, because I might not be back in a couple of weeks myself. Because the Friday prior to that is my birthday. I'm away all the way over that weekend. I'm not back into Sunderland until stupidly late on Sunday night. So I don't know if I have enough time to see anything. So there's a chance that I might not be here the week after.
Right. It'll be interesting. We'll see then. We'll be back, though, in some form. And one of the films that Stuart will be seeing next week to review is Everest.
For free.
Which is the sort of the drama following a group of characters going up the mountain based on a true story of events that did not end well. So we're going to leave you with a little clip of that. Until next week's show, bye-bye.
Bye.
It hurts. It's dangerous. It destroys relationships. It's costing you all a small fortune.
Are there any negative aspects to this?
I gotta ask the question. You know I do. Why?
Why?
Because it's there!
That's why. Thank you, Mr. Mallory.
Come on, guys. I'm serious. Doug. Why?
Come on, tell them about the kids.
What?
Tell them about the kids.
Yeah.
Who's kids? You have kids?
Yeah, I have kids. So I was thinking maybe it's they see a regular guy can, follow impossible dreams. Maybe they'll be inspired to do the same, I guess.